Okay, welcome everyone to another video review. I'm going to go back to my obsession with the Blood Rage board game with this latest little kind of mini update, building the perfect set, so to speak. So this is a custom 3D printed version of the Pillage tokens from the game. For those of you who are aware of the Blood Rage board game, this will need no introduction, but I'll give a little bit of background for those of you who may not know. So for the Blood Rage board game, if you invest in the Kickstarter expansions, you can upgrade a lot of the sort of existing cardboard pieces with nicer, jazzier, three-dimensional versions. So as an example, over here, this is the Doom token. It's used to kind of denote which land is going to be destroyed next by Ragnarok. And so this is the regular board game. You just get this little cardboard, square cutout. Not very fancy, but if you invest in the Kickstarter as an exclusive, you will actually get a 3D version of this. It's still plastic, but it's just a little bit nicer. There's a 3D Doom token, as well as a 3D first player token. And for instance, the Saga token over here, this is the cardboard, right? You can see it, it's got the candle and the scroll. And there's like a nice little 3D version of this as well, if you get the Kickstarter expansion. I think that's part of the Wild Boar set, okay? But if you get all of that, there are still, two things that do not have a three-dimensional representation of the board game. One of them, which I don't think anybody has stepped up to change, are the actual large Ragnarok, I guess for want of a better word, the Ragnarok markers with the name of the land. So those are the ones that you randomly shuffle and you place on the age board, the age card, the Saga card, so to speak, to determine which lands are destroyed. So they haven't come up with a three-dimensional version of that, which I can understand. It's a little bit tricky to kind of figure out how to do that. And then the other one, of course, are the Pillage Markers. So these here are what you get with the core game. And the way it works is, you place these little cardboard squares on the board, and you place them where there's, in the little position there. I'm not going to go over the rules of the game again. For those of you who know the game, you already understand what this is. But for those of you who don't know anything about the game, basically you put this little square piece of cardboard on a land in the board, and if you successfully conquer the land, or so-called pillage it, you turn it over to show that that land has been pillaged, and the pillaged land can't be pillaged again. And so by turning it over, you're saying, okay, we're kind of done with the land. Okay, that's kind of the simplistic rules of it. So there's and if you do that, you win the prize that's on the other side. So there's three of these guys, which are called, they're the rage tokens. Then these are the these are the horns, and then I think this is the glory, 5 glory. This is one of each of them. This is in Gurdrasil, which is the center land. And again, if you turn it over, it's just pillaged. And these are the axes, okay? Which basically is how much glory you win per battle, all of that. So the rage, the axes, the horns. This is actually 5 glory points, and then this is if you get this, you get one of each essentially. See, so it kind of shows you one of each. So this is what the board game comes with basically, and no matter what Kickstarter expansion you buy or support, there's no 3D version of this. So believe it or not, a few crazy guys decided, hey, we want to really bling our Blood Rage board game, and we want to turn these guys into also little 3D representations. And this is sort of the fruits of their labor. Okay, so I'm going to go through this one by one. It's pretty cool because essentially, you know, they kind of had to sculpt everything out. And so here is the 3D representation of the Rage Pillage token. So it's kind of like that fist holding a lightning bolt. And if you compare that with the cardboard, I mean, that's a pretty nice, you know, 3D representation of that, right? It's pretty neat. So there's 3 of these. This, of course, is the horns, right? There's 2 of those. And then here is the axes. Very nicely done. And so right here, you also have the 5 glory points. That's pretty cool. And finally here, you have the tree of Gurdrasil. And this is the center of the land, and if you conquer that land and pillage that land, and you know, you win that, this symbolizes 1 of each of the rage, horns, and the axe, okay? So I thought that was a pretty clever way of doing that. So this is a tree, okay? It represents this, this token here. So now remember, every time you pillage, you can't pillage again during that particular round. And whereas here, you know, it's rather elegant. Once you pillage it, you just turn it over. Because you're creating 3D tokens, you can't really turn it over. And not to mention, it certainly doesn't look very nice, you know, doing this, right? It's not quite the same. So what do? Well, you have to create for each of these, and there's 9 of them total, 2, 4, 7, 8, 9. You have to, for each of these, you also have to create these smoking ruins to denote that that land has been pillaged. And so you have to make 1 for each. So since there's 9 here, you make 9 over here. And you can kind of take a look at the details of that, which is really nice. It's supposed to represent sort of the charred remains of a burned homestead or something like that, which is, again, sort of a neat little 3D representation of what this is supposed to be, okay? Kind of destruction, burnt, you know, ruins, stuff like that. So how's all of this possible? Well, you know, somebody actually went ahead, and I think on the computer, they actually designed and sculpted these little representations. And then you actually have to print it out. So the person that I bought this from, I don't really even know his name, but I wanted to, you know, thank him. I don't know how many of these he made. I doubt that he made very many of these. As you can imagine, they're not, you know, cheap, because you have to factor in sort of the labor and the ingenuity of creating these in the first place, designing them, and then printing them out, and then shipping them. He's based in France. And, you know, he did a really great job packing them. I'm very pleased. He used, you know, peanuts and bubble wrap. And there's 2 options to buy these. So one option is he prints it out in resin. So this is resin. The advantage of printing it out in resin, and again, I'm not sure if you can really appreciate it because, you know, it's so tiny, is that the detail is sharper. There's just, you know, like I said, a bit more detail, a bit higher quality. The downside is resin is brittle. I mean, it can break, right? If any of you guys own resin statues, you understand that. So it's more amenable, it's more susceptible to chipping, cracking, breaking, especially this tree here. But he did ship it very beautifully so that there's no damage, really, okay? So one disadvantage is it's better quality, that's great, but it's also more brittle, more susceptible to damage. The second is because it's resin, there's no color to the resin, right? There's no such thing as red resin, green resin, etc., which means that you have to take the time to paint this up yourself. You know, which is not exactly the hardest thing in the world to do. This is just basic colors. We're not exactly creating the Mona Lisa here, guys. But at the same time, it is one extra step you have to do. For me, as those of you who are following this know, I've already kind of contracted with a professional company in Romania to take care of this for me. So this is just gonna be one more thing they're gonna do. And so I do kind of look forward to seeing what they can do to sort of jazz it up and make it really, really cool. You know, there should be no confusion about what each of these symbols stands for. So they can, you know, do something I think really, really neat or cool with it. Again, these are little small pieces. So that's my plan. That's why I got these resin, these resin versions, because I do want a really, really nice painted version of that. I think that'll look really neat in conjunction with all the other painted stuff. So that's option one, which is the more expensive option. Option two are the plastic pieces. So we're going to move that right over here. So the plastic pieces, of course, because they're plastic, you can print it in different colored material. And the disadvantage is that for plastic, it's just not, the detail is not quite as nice. It's still nice, but just not quite as sharp, as the resin version. I mean, it's nothing to be ashamed of. Again, it's kind of hard to focus on these things, so hopefully I'm just gonna lay them here, and you can take a look. So I've looked at it, and it's not bad, but I guess the resin, true to form, is a little bit nicer, a little bit sharper, the quality a little bit better. This is just plastic. So that's, of course, the main disadvantage is it's cheaper, and it costs less to print it from plastic. However, the advantage, of course, is it's very hardy, right? Plastic can't really break, so it is meant to be played. Like if you're part of a game night or gaming group, and you just love Blood Rage or whatever, you're playing it quite frequently, then you do want plastic because it's just harder, handling it all the time, etc. So I think for a normal board game, this is the way to go. I bought a set for a friend of mine, the friend who introduced me down this path of madness. But I know, as a thank you to him, I bought an extra set of plastic. And I was trying to debate, do I want to go resin for him or plastic? But most of the minifigures or the miniatures are plastic. He does, I presume use his board a lot more to just play, and so it just fits better to have plastic for him. So I got it for him. So here's the three red lightning bolts. Here's the two axe handles. Here's the gray horns. You have the tree again, printed already in green, so that's nice. You can see a little bit of the. Come on, focus. You can see a little bit of the detail, hopefully. Yeah, kind of like that. It's kind of hard to do here, but yeah. So you kind of get the idea anyways for the colors, and then this nice little 5 token for the 5 glory you get. Pretty simple colors. Again, nothing too fancy. And then here it's just in simple black. This is the destroyed, versions of it. So that's it. That's the plastic. So I plan to use this again for more like everyday play, and then for the resin, I'm going to get it painted up. And so you can see that this is just like a very, very basic version. If you want to just go for simple paint, I mean, hell, I could paint this up myself, right? Anybody can do that. Just splash red. You're just practically dipping it. And it will do, it will serve quite well. Just paint the tree green, paint the rage red, obviously. This could just be left gray. That could be just left gray, and then you just paint the axe like, blue. But if you want to, bling it up, and you invested the money to get these nice little resin copies, the opportunity does exist to really jazz it up. And so, you're going to pay a little bit extra, but let's see what those guys can do and make it a little bit, cooler. Like, put a little bit of, maybe metal, glint, a little bit of metal effect on the axes, have a little bit more variety with the lightning bolt in the hand. The same thing with the horns. You can really add a lot of detail to it. The same thing with the destroyed, pillaged version of the tokens. So I think there's an opportunity to make this actually pretty cool. So I'll be interested to see what they do with it. And they can also make each one just a little bit different. I mean, not too different, because you have to kind of know. But, we all know what then the axe is basically glory. We know the horns are horns, and the lightning bolt is rage. And within that context, they don't have to paint it red, right, for us to get that's rage. We know that this is rage, and the rage token. And so they can do things with it, make it bloodier or whatnot. Again, just kind of play with it, make each one a little bit different, so it's not so boring. It's not like this, all, the same colors. So even the pillage tokens now can be a little bit magical, can be a little bit fun to look at. So anyways, that's it. I waited quite a while for these. Again, they had to come all the way, had to be imported all the way from Europe in France. And of course, ironically, I'm going to have to send this one back to Europe, this time to Romania. He did offer to send it directly there, but since I bought multiple sets, I wanted it here first just to inspect it, get an idea of what's going on. And then I have, of course, my expansion minifigures and all that stuff to send to the company anyway, so I'll just put all of that together. One of the cool things about working with minis is they are mini, they're very tiny, and so you can save a little bit on shipping because a lot of it will just be very light. They don't weigh anything, and a lot of it just kind of packaging to prevent damage, and it doesn't cost too much as far as that goes to go back and forth. One of the things is when they give you these resin prints, and he did clean them up a little bit. I mean, these are very, very clean printings. You know, he has to print them, and then he has to cure them, then he has to pack them, then he has to ship them. And all of that does take time. It takes a couple of days to go through that process. So all in all, these are all very, very perfect printings. I think there was one of these destroyed versions that's missing a little bit of resin on the side. I'm trying to show it, but you have to kind of look around. Let me see with my eyes if I can find where that one is. Here it is. So I don't know if you can see it, but you can see that there is a little bit of a gap right here, which is fine. You know, when they repaint it, they just have to putty that in a little bit and just smooth it over. Or, they can make it part of the destruction. Other than that, everything else is perfect, and when it's painted, I'm pretty confident it's going to look pretty neat. So again, hope you enjoy that. They couldn't have made too many of these. I found him like literally a year and a half later. A lot of times with these little projects, the interest dies and they kind of fold up shop. So I was pleasantly surprised and pleased that he still provided the service. And so I can't imagine him having created a lot of these. These are for very, very, I think, hardcore players of the game. But I just love that because it's like a neat idea and somebody out there made it happen. You have an idea, you did the work, and it's again a service that those of us who are into it really appreciate, and it does add, I think, a lot of extra to the game now that you have these guys there. So I think that's really cool. So there you have it. I think this is going to be my last real, bling addition to the board game. Just kind of, at this point, essentially waiting for the paints to be taken care of. But we got, we're going to have all the miniatures painted up. We're going to have our three-dimensional pillage tokens painted up. All of the Kickstarter 3D versions are going to be done. We have the first player horns from the game night exclusive that I showed earlier, and then we have the extra thick cardboard stock as well. So we pretty much essentially almost have it all. I guess the only other thing that's left to go with this is maybe a custom board, but that is kind of a whole nother level. That would have to be literally a unique custom piece that has to be handcrafted, and I don't know if I really want to go that far. But as far as we can go with the original board provided by the game, I think it's going to be a pretty cool and neat thing to see when it's all put together. All right, this might be the last Blood Rage video until the final thing or the final product all comes together. So until then, take care, guys.